The day before yesterday, the American pirate kidnapping operation against Venezuela. Many basic details are already out. But first, Tuanzu must emphasize something. Some mainstream media, you cannot tell whose side they are on, or call it an arrest of Maduro. When reporting the Venezuelan complaint at the United Nations, they put kidnapping in quotation marks. If this is not kidnapping, what is it? What authority does anyone have to arrest him? Let us, as independent media, standardize our terminology. This was a kidnapping. In this kidnapping, the American aggressors launched 150 sorties in 2 rounds of strikes, relying entirely on carrier-based aircraft. This proves the aircraft carrier faced no threat from air defense or anti-ship missiles. The Red Sea naval battle already showed that when an aircraft carrier comes under anti-ship harassment during flight operations, it must maneuver and retain carrier aircraft for defensive patrol. Organizing 150 sorties against land targets under those conditions would be impossible. That night, the Venezuelan Air Force and Navy played no role. After ground fighting began, the army also failed to act. The command and control system was paralyzed. Looking at the entire operation, if the Venezuelan military had been even slightly capable of fighting, it would have been a gamble. After the airstrikes, the US launched over a dozen helicopters from amphibious assault ships, transporting no more than 300 air assault troops. With no ground forces to link up with, they charged straight into Caracas. More reckless than the Antonov airport assault. Mock the VDV, understand the VDV, become the VDV against such a weak assault force. A single armored battalion on the streets would have crushed these light infantry. Along the helicopter route, if 10 men with a dozen Igla manpads and 2,000 armed militia firing from windows in Caracas could have produced a Black Hawk Down scenario. The result? Venezuela could not even shoot down one helicopter. The American raid was calculated on the certainty that Venezuela 120,000 strong military could not respond. Even 120,000 pigs scattered across the countryside would take 3 days to round up. Without such a spectacularly accommodating adversary, the US military could never have pulled this off. Who is to blame? Venezuela itself, for never taking national defense seriously. The Americans claim Maduro had moles in his inner circle, but once your military cannot protect those at the top, and they live in constant fear, there is no telling when a traitor surfaces. This military weakness is the most direct cause of this national humiliation, stemming from 2 consecutive left-wing governments, over 20 years, never conducting serious military development. Venezuelan fiscal expenditure and military spending have long been mismatched. Despite American sanctions, the fiscal budget is not small. Even 2025 stood at roughly $22.5 billion, on par with Iran. Yet, military spending averaged only $1.2 billion per year, sometimes dropping to a few hundred million, less than 1/20th of total spending. The army has only 60,000 troops to cover 910,000 square kilometers. Caracas faces the United States, sits right on the coast, threatened by amphibious landing and helicopter assault. The emperor guarding the frontier. Yet only the 4th Armored Division defends it with fewer than 10,000 troops. The US assembled 20,000 Marines for Southern Spear alone. Venezuela would be outnumbered on the ground. Worse, soldiers earn only about $100 per month, below the minimum wage, less than 1/5 of minimum living costs. Desertions are frequent, morale universally low. Even the elite 4th Armored Division still uses T-70 2B1 tanks from the Chavez era. In the Russian military, these would be assigned to garrison duties at best. Infantry fighting vehicles number fewer than Sudan. Divisional self-propelled artillery, only 48 tools, 19 MSTA howitzers. Brigade field artillery still uses M101 howitzers from 1941, an Otto Mellera model, 56 mountain guns from 1957. What can you expect from such an army? If even the army is in this state, the more advanced arms need no mention. 3 months ago, responding to the American threat, Venezuela held an enormous exercise. The scenario: Americans seize a small island, Venezuela launches an amphibious landing to retake it. The island was named Barbados, awfully familiar. The moment it began, field air defense relied mainly on 23mm manually operated anti-aircraft guns. Point air defense on the SA-3GOA system. How could this contend with a modern air force? Maduro Command Center still used paper maps and open-air tents. Its integration worse than our PLA brigade level command posts 20 years ago. It could neither manage electromagnetic signals nor maintain concealed communications. Completely exposed. Once struck, paralyzed instantly. The Air Force purchased a small batch of Su-30 fighters, but without AWACS, electronic warfare planes, or maritime patrol aircraft. Situational awareness was zero. 80% of Navy vessels have no air defense. At sea, they can only huddle together, as good as no combat power. The 8 million strong militia making waves online is even more of a joke. Their training is worse than the university military program in Guangxi. Wave flags, march into the wilderness, sing songs. That is it. Very few have touched a gun because Venezuela lacks small arms. It was not until the 3rd of July of last year that they opened a factory to produce AK ammunition. Arm the militia with kitchen cleavers. Forget drones or missiles. Venezuela does not even have long-range rocket artillery. Apart from special forces infiltration, it has no capability to threaten the United States. These 20 years of military development reek of showpiece quality, using performance to scare the enemy, not actually fighting. No serious defensive preparation against American intervention. So if Venezuela did not spend its money on national defense, where did it go? This is a sad story. When it comes to doing things for the poor, across Latin America, no one has done more than the two left-wing governments of Chavez and Maduro. Maduro background fits online political commentators perfectly. From a working-class family, his father was a union leader, student council president in middle school, defending student interests. Before graduating, became a bus driver, joined a socialist group, and secretly established the first labor union at the Caracas Metro Company. After following Chavez in 1998, became his right-hand man, president of the National Assembly, Minister of Foreign Affairs, vice president, winning the presidential election twice. His political line, the socialism of the 21st century, championed by Chavez. Domestically, full public political participation. Each neighborhood formed a communal council of dozens to several hundred households, responsible for local development, infrastructure, health, housing, education, all decided by the councils. Nearly everyone could vote at citizen assemblies, elect officers, form working groups, supervise officials. Above the councils, a dozen or so formed a commune. From bridges to dams and power plants, decisions could bypass local government. Citizens decided, then applied for budget funding. Cooperatives, with government subsidies, generated funds, commercially popular participation, and direct democracy to the greatest extent. Between efficiency and fairness, the two governments practiced absolute fairness first. Oil revenue was primarily spent on the poor. Welfare was the true first priority. Food subsidy programs ensured over 10 million impoverished people could buy affordable, quality food. The Into the Poor Neighborhoods medical program established thousands of community clinics. Literacy campaigns sent soldiers into remote areas to teach people to read. Land redistribution was carried out in the countryside. In urban slums, even makeshift shelters were granted property rights. For left-wing revolutionary movements across Latin America, Venezuela supported them with everything. In June 2005, Venezuela proposed Caribbean neighbors pay only 60% upfront for crude oil. The remaining 40% repaid over 25 years at 2% interest, a 40% discount. When oil exceeded $50 per barrel, left-wing governments received 40% off. Above $100, 50% off. This lasted 10 years until prices collapsed in 2014. Venezuela invested $2 billion to establish the Bank of the South and the Latin American Reserve Fund, providing low-interest loans with no political conditions to left-wing governments challenging American hegemony. In popular sovereignty, fair distribution, and support for world revolution, Venezuela did everything it could. From 2000 to 2013, the economy grew at 3.5% annually. Per capita GDP rose from $4,800 to $12,000. Poverty dropped from 23% to 8.5%. Everything seemed to flourish, but good times did not last. These factors combined to drive the economy into a massive trap. By 2015, external debt reached 99.8% of GDP. In 2016, inflation hit 481.5%. In 2017, 1,642.8%. By 2018, it skyrocketed to 1 million%. In 2019, in a country of 31 million with no civil war, 4 million had already fled as economic refugees. With such good intentions, how did the country end up here? Simple. Human desires only grow. Venezuela early success. bred the very crisis it faces today. Starting from the 2000s, the Venezuelan government rode rising oil prices to obtain massive revenues, constantly increasing welfare subsidies. This narrowed the income gap dramatically, a good thing, but it also produced another consequence. Many poorest citizens, buoyed by subsidies, rose into the middle class. Their demands evolved from eating enough to eating well, from makeshift shelters to demanding flush toilets. People wanting to improve their lives is completely just. But for Venezuela, human desires are unlimited. While the oil in the ground is finite, other non-oil industries must develop in parallel to sustain growth. A resource-dependent country must practice counter-cyclical policy, accumulate funds when oil revenues are high, invest in non-oil industries. So when oil declines, the country can maintain balance of payments through those sectors. But Venezuelan society is composed of communal councils, practicing direct voting. Money was gushing out of the ground. Not spending it would be a waste. For council members, asking for money to hand out welfare wins votes tomorrow. But asking people to tighten belts, accumulate more, and develop an industry that would not show returns for 5 or 10 years would get them thrown out of office the next day. So overspending, eating next year, grain this year, became the fundamental character of Venezuelan decision-making. Social expenditure climbed relentlessly, any accumulation treated as heresy, until oil prices plunged from $93 in 2011 to $36 in 2014. The underground ATM could not dispense cash. Balance of payments collapsed overnight, and daily necessities could no longer be imported. Store shelves emptied. Meanwhile, subsidies dared not be cut, even squeezing military funding, neglecting defense. The moment subsidies were reduced, social discontent would build and the government would become unstable. Without funds for modernization, military capability deteriorated. Morale sank, loyalty eroded, more banknotes flooded the market. Inflation skyrocketed, and the economy collapsed. Once social chaos set in, the government still relied on the military to maintain order. An emperor does not send hungry soldiers into battle. Since it could not pay proper wages, it offered other perks. Starting in 2016, of 23 states, 11 had military officers as governors. Of 32 cabinet ministers, a third were military. Distribution of scarce goods, food, and medicine was controlled by the military. Operating rights for 5 ports were handed to the military. By 2017, the last economic lifeline, PDVSA, was placed under military management. The military was doing booming business. While this maintained stability temporarily, how could such a military fight? Where would it find resolve to stand against the United States? Ultimately, from governance to national defense, nobody looked at economic data or combat readiness. They looked at who could put on the best performance. The more a politician spent, the more votes he attracted. The better the showman, the higher he climbed. Nobody cared where the money came from. When the underground ATM worked, everyone was a revolutionary. The moment imperialism came knocking, every last one became a collaborator. That is how the tragedy of Venezuela came to pass. Tuanzor says all this not to mock Maduro. The left-wing practice in Venezuela harshly critiqued imperialism and briefly sutured the open veins of Latin America. It did everything to improve Venezuelan lives. But when imperialist bombers ravaged the capital, when henchmen kicked down the front door, when elected council members betrayed the people, how many Venezuelans took to the streets? How many picked up weapons? How many defended the president who gave everything for them? Now the acting president has already invited the United States to jointly draft a cooperation agenda. How many still remember Chavez's teachings? Remember that the socialism of the 21st century once changed their fate. Impossible because the masses were never organized, lacked training, and had no vanguard party. The only politics they understood was that ballot, how much welfare they received today. And Maduro has no more benefits to hand out. In the end, the ones who gave their lives for Venezuela were 32 Cuban soldiers. The ultimate irony. Meanwhile, some online were talking about fair distribution and opposing imperialism yesterday. But the moment they saw Daddy America take action, they flip-flopped, saying Maduro was the worst villain and the American empire was delivering justice. They accuse others of practicing winology every day. Yet they are the ones who care most about winning and losing. They just insist America must win. The tragedy of Chavez and Maduro lies here. They lived simple lives and worked diligently. Chavez remained clean-handed until the day he died. The United States slapped corruption charges on Maduro for years. yet never produced hard evidence. But that does not stop imperialism from fabricating rumors. Take the so-called Maduro won $700 million in the lottery story. Tuanzor spent 2 days scouring months of reports from major official news agencies, leading Spanish and English media, even reputable political outlets. No record of Maduro ever saying he won the lottery. On the contrary, the American Attorney General admitted the actions against Venezuela were acts of the US government. The Venezuelan Ministry of Foreign Affairs has repeatedly refuted American slander. Yet this China-exclusive rumor spreads virus, like across the Chinese language internet, leaving one astonished at the adversary ability to build a skyscraper out of thin air in our public discourse arena. They loved the people at the bottom, and the people loved them back. They had sincere compassion for the people suffering. I believe in their sincerity, and that they truly wanted to be good people. But in endless darkness, the politics of good intentions is only a fire that provides temporary warmth. Only a disciplined, revolutionary party can be the red sun that dispels the long night. If a late developing nation does not build a great party, does not forge an army loyal to the people, does not make enormous national sacrifices, does not carry out an ultra-high rate of accumulation, does not fight to break through the threshold of independent industrialization, then no matter what resources it has, what welfare society it builds, how sky-high the approval ratings, the moment imperialism flips the table, it will have no means of resistance. The tragedy of Venezuela once again proves that dust will not sweep itself away without a broom. Imperialism will not willingly exit the stage of history. Without the red path, the road to liberation for third world countries is destined to be full of twists and turns. Yet, these failures have never been an ending, only a beginning. These blood lessons will teach the people again and again. Human history has reached a crossroads, whether to march toward light or toward barbarism. The final answer can only be revealed by that powerful socialist nation in the East. That is all for today. Do not forget to subscribe.